am currently a 10th grader attending Alliance Academy of Innovation in Forsyth County, Georgia. So my topic is technology with speech development issues. And I chose this because my younger brother has autism and he's been nonverbal throughout his whole life. And in parentheses, I also have MMI because that's going to be like the main topic that's going to be discussed in the presentation. So right now in present day, there are alternatives. If you cannot communicate, there are alternative ways to communicate. And that includes the augmented and alternative communication. So that's basically like a tablet or an iPad. It could also be a computer. And it has different pictures and phrases which the user can press and click on. And they're able to communicate like that. Another alternative communication method is sign language. And another one is speech therapy, which a speech therapist annually helps a patient or a child to learn how to speak. And although these three are good alternatives, there's two things to keep in mind. If the person has motor dysfunctionality and speech development issues or like speech issues, then they won't be able to use speech therapy, or they won't even be able to use sign language or even the AAC. And another thing to keep in mind is that these are extremely expensive because you have speech therapy tuition costs and you have sign language. Even though it is not expensive to learn sign language, you have tuitions to learn sign language, and you have classes tend to learn sign language, and that does cost a lot depending on where you live. And then the AAC also costs a lot, so that's something to keep in mind. So a new technology. So that kind of led me to finding out new technologies that are getting developed for speech issues. And that's where it kind of landed on the MMI. So to be more specific, this is the implanted MMI. And so the one on the right is by Neuralink, which is one of the companies that are developing the MMI. And so their specific type of MMI has a neural thread, which is a kind of thread-like material that is flexible enough to be implanted on the surface of the brain. And so that will basically be wrapped around your brain. And that's going to record and like all your neural signals, your brain signals, your brain waves. And you also have the circle piece, which is the actual MMI. That's where it records and that's where it processes everything. And so that it also has built-in Bluetooth where it can connect to your phone, it can connect to your computer, it can connect to everything around you. So the procedure that will be used to implant the MMI is automated neurosurgery, and they are developing robotic systems to actually do automated neurosurgery. And this is because the MMI is extremely small, and to use your fingers to implant in your brain would not work because it would not work because it's
1 second, please.
Hold on a second.
Can everyone please mute their phones? Thank you.
Do you want me to resume? All right. So the procedure that will be used to implant the MMI is precision automated neurosurgery, and that is done because the MMI is extremely small and fragile, and for you to just do it with your fingers would be pretty tough, and it wouldn't pretty much make sense to do it like that. And another thing to keep in mind throughout this whole presentation is the different parts of the brain. So you have your frontal lobe, you have your parietal lobe, you have your temporal lobe, and each of these different parts of your brain process different parts of what you're going to do. So for example, your frontal lobe, it controls your thought, it controls your memory, and it controls your behavior. Other lobes control your language, your touch, your visual processing, your balance and coordination, hearing, and learning and emotions. And it controls, your brain pretty much just controls breathing, heart rate, and temperature. And another thing to keep in mind is that inside of the brain, you have over 86 billion neurons. And these neurons have three parts to them, which is an axon, a soma, and a dendrite. And so you also have synapses, which are basically axon-dendrite connections. And so these synapses have chemical reactions that take place inside of them. And depending on the amount of willpower it takes, there's either high voltage in the synapses or there's low voltage. And what the MMI does is that as it's wrapped around, as all those electrodes are wrapped around in the surface of your brain, they're recording and they're immediately processing and then they're decoding everything that's happening in your brain. So really, in conclusion, you can think about how the MMI is not going to be just used for speech issues and motor issues. It can also be used for whether you want to just like turn on your TV, or you could just there's a wide variety of things you can do. And there's also different versions of the MMI. So as I've discussed, on the right side, there is the implanted MMI made by Neuralink. And in the middle, there's the headphone MMI made by Neurable, which is basically the same thing as a normal MMI as seen on the left side, except everything that's in the normal MMI will be placed inside of the headphones. And then you also have the normal MMI, which is almost similar to a EEG scanner. So all of those little white dots are basically electrodes. Those are very large electrodes. However, even though there are these many different versions of the MMI, the non-implanted version is not that good because of your skull and how it disrupts your frequency. It disrupts the recording in your signaling. And what to expect in the future of the MMI and what will be the future because of the MMI. So the MMI will innovate not only speech technology, but it can also innovate other technologies such as brain-controlled machines, robotics. It can control prosthetic limbs, and there are many companies that are developing the MMI. So there's Neuralink, as we've discussed in the previous slides. There's Neurable, there's Emotiv, and there's Kernel, Melton MMI, and BitBrain. Some of these companies have not disclosed what they're doing yet. Some of them are, as seen by Neurable, are taking different approaches of the MMI, which in the case, as seen by Neurable, it's the headphone MMI. And some of these companies are just doing the non-implanted MMI. And as you see through these slides and as you see through the pictures, it can pretty much you can pretty much tell that they're commercially producing these. So once they do get fully developed, they will be commercially produced and people can pretty much just buy them. And it will also work, it will also be important for people that have motor issues and speech issues. And then who is the MMI useful for? So the MMI is going to be useful for people with speech disabilities. The MMI is also going to be useful for people with motor disorders. And if you want to add in there, the MMI is also useful for people that just want to turn their Xbox on. But in actuality, those are the two important reasons the MMI is important for. And my summary and recommendations of the MMI. So in conclusion, the MMI will help many people. It will open new doors to new innovations in the future. And then one recommendation I would give for the MMI is that there is going to be radiation, as seen by a lot of technology and a lot of hardware. Anything will have radiation, anything will emit radiation. But I have heard that throughout my research, I've seen that many companies are building protective cases that will emit less radiation and therefore won't really affect your brain. And another recommendation is to make the MMI more accessible for everyone. So at this moment of time, the MMIs that are getting developed, they are only going to be able to be used by people that have been verbal at one point or another in their life. So if you've been nonverbal throughout your whole life, then you can't really use it. And the way the MMI actually works is that you have to think about what you're saying. So you have to think about writing it on a piece of paper. So like if the user wants to say hi, then he has to think that he's writing hi on a piece of paper for it to actually output onto a computer. And that's pretty much it for my slideshow. And thank you for listening to it. And obviously, as seen here at the end, it will help a lot of people with speech development issues and with motor dysfunctionality issues. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can let me know.
No, thank you, Sai, for the presentation. I had just a couple quick questions. The last point you were sharing about those that can't use it. So am I to understand that the reason is they haven't had the experience of that writing, the thinking and writing it down is what prohibits them from being able to access it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so basically at one point or another they had to have been verbal, um, and had to have been talking at one point or another in their life, or they know how to write. If they do know how to do all of that, then it's easier for them to understand how to work the MMI. But if they have been nonverbal throughout their whole life and they can't really, write, or depending on their scenario, then it will take like a long time. But at the end, I mean, they can reach to that goal of using the MMI, but it will take a long time.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And the other quick question is for those that do have it, whether it's implanted inside or the headphones version that you were mentioning, does environmental weather, I'm thinking particularly the weather, does that impact any of the electrical signals there? So if it's a static environment that someone is in, a thunderstorm or something like that, would that have any measurable effects on the operation?
So at this moment, I know the Neuralink MMI has a protective casing, and I haven't dug that much deep into the protective casing of the MMI for the Neuralink one, but I am pretty sure that the protective casing kind of prohibits from it getting affected by external sources, so such as weather conditions or like electrical kind of things. And then the headphones MMI, I haven't dug that deep into that version of the MMI.
Okay, and it also applies to like the person swimming. If they're swimming or something, with the water or pressure have any impact on it if someone is in a swimming pool?
No, it will have a protective casing.
Okay. Okay, I'm thinking more about pressure on the.
Oh, the pressure.
Pressure on the body.
I haven't dug that deep into the research.
Okay. Well, good presentation. Thank you.